Target pledge at afa.net.
Darkness is not an affirmative force. It simply reoccupies the space vacated by the light.
This is the Hamilton Corner on American Family Radio
and Urban Family Talk.
It should be uncomfortable for a believer to live as a hypocrite.
Delivering people out of the bondage of mainstream media
and the philosophies of this world.
God has called you and me to be his ambassadors, even in this dark moment. Let's not miss our moment.
And now, the Hamilton Corner.
Welcome to the Hamilton Corner, this Thursday edition, one more day till the weekend. Good news for some, maybe bad news for others if you got a weekend job. Sorry to bring that up, but my name is Walker Wildmon, and I'm guest hosting for Abraham Hamilton III here on the Hamilton Corner, heard exclusively on the American Family Radio Network and Urban Family Talk. Good to be with you today. A lot of stuff to talk about. So much to talk about. I may be going too fast for you here in a few minutes, but nonetheless, I'm going to try to get through all of the content that we're going to cover today. But before I get into the news of the day, I want to turn our attention to God's Word and then provide you some encouragement with a project that we're doing here at American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk called Truth for Youth Bibles. But before I talk about that project, reading in Mark chapter 5, the Gospel of Mark chapter 5, many of you are familiar with this story, and this is where Jesus heals the man who is demon possessed. And so the first 15 or so verses are about Jesus healing the demon-possessed man. But if you look towards the end of the chapter, or really midway through the chapter, at verse 18, after Jesus has healed him, now Jesus is preparing to depart and go somewhere else, go to another town, another city. And so in verse 18, it says this: as he, talking about Jesus, as he was getting into the boat, the man who had been possessed with demons begged him that he might be with him. So essentially there, the once demon-possessed man is begging to go with Jesus. He wants to stay with Jesus, travel with him, because after all, Jesus just performed a miracle on him. And then in verse 19 and 20, here's what it reads. It says, and he did not permit him, but said to him, go home to your friends and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you. And he went away, the demon-possessed man went away and began to proclaim in the area how Jesus had done much for him, and everyone marveled. And the reason I brought that up today is because the testimony of those who have been saved by Jesus Christ, who have had their sins forgiven, their testimony is important. And their testimony can be used to bring others to the saving knowledge of Jesus Christ. And that ties directly in to the campaign that we're doing here at American Family Radio called Truth for Youth. The Truth for Youth Bible campaign is a campaign that we're partnering with. American Family Radio is partnering with Revival Fires Ministry. And if you call in, we'll send you a free New Testament Bible for you to give out to any youth or teenagers or children at a local school. So if you have a student in your household, elementary school, middle school, high school, if you call in to American Family Association to the number and website I'm going to give out in a minute, you can receive a free Bible, one free Bible per student, and you go and hand them out to someone who you think is an unbeliever, in hopes that they will come to the saving knowledge of Jesus Christ. And so before I give out the phone number and the website, I want to give you a few testimonies to wrap this subject up, a few testimonies that have come from these Truth for Youth Bibles over the years. And the first testimony is this. This young man wrote in after receiving the Truth for Youth Bible, and here's what he said. He said, I used to be heavily entrenched in Satanism. vampires, and witchcraft. This was due to my parents' involvement and temptation with witchcraft and the macabre. I didn't know any better until I received a copy of your Bible when I was overseas. Somebody heard you on AFR radio, American Family Radio, and got the Bible for me. Jesus saved me. I have already ordered more Bibles, so more of my classmates and friends whom I had mistakenly convinced to leave the religion will be saved. Praise God for that. Another amazing testimony of God using the Truth for Youth Bible to bring people into His kingdom. This testimony reads, one of Todd's favorite stories, talking about Tim Todd of Revival Fires Ministry, who heads up the ministry we're partnering with. One of his favorite stories comes from a teenager who had taken a Truth for Youth Bible and gave it to a gang leader in her school. She also invited Alex, who's the gang leader, to her church. Alex came to hear Tim Todd preach that night, and he got saved. The testimony goes on to say this. Not only did Alex, the gang leader, come to know Jesus Christ, but Alex and his entire gang came to the Lord after one bold teenager, the young lady, was willing to give Alex a copy of the Bible. Nonetheless, the testimony goes on, and not only did Alex come to know Christ, but his entire gang came to know Christ because he took them to a revival, and they all confessed to the saving knowledge of Jesus Christ at the revival. So praise God for our testimonies. Just as the demon-possessed man went on to testify to people around him what Jesus had done, we too can testify what Jesus has done, is doing, and will continue to do in each of our lives. Moving on into the news of the day, you can also, one quick note, you can watch the show on Facebook and YouTube at the Hamilton Corner. Watch it on Facebook and YouTube. Also, you can visit our website, afr.net, and listen to the podcast. We'll have the podcast up later on after the show, and if you miss a little bit of something or you have to go do something else, you can always listen to the podcast later at afr.net. But piggybacking off the story from yesterday we talked about the radical jihadis, is what I'm going to call them, in New Mexico, who were arrested because they had these 11 kids at this horrible camp, if you will, and they were training these kids to commit school shootings. I'm not sure if I talked much about that, about what the men were doing there, but we talked about this a little bit yesterday. I found out a little more information about this, and I'm going to kind of expound upon what we talked about yesterday. First, prosecutors have revealed that the Muslim men arrested in New Mexico, along with 3 other adult women, they were holding 11 children in this camp out in the middle of nowhere in the desert, and they were training them to commit mass school shootings. This is no kidding here. This is like something you would read from Syria or Iraq. They were training these young kids to commit mass school shootings. But not only that, here's what I wanted to expound upon. Yesterday, I put a little bit of blame on the landowner, and I put a little bit of blame on the law enforcement for not taking action quicker than they did. And let me talk about why. First off, the more I studied this, it appears that the landowner notified law enforcement on multiple occasions, but law enforcement was slow to act. Local law enforcement, they were slow to act. And so, to the credit of the landlord, he did notify the proper authorities, and he did it on multiple occasions. And the landowner even went to court to try to get these guys removed from his property. And so kudos to him for that. But my problem with the local law enforcement here is this. All right, you had these 2 men, 3 women, keeping these 11 children in these horrible living conditions, and it's obviously child abuse at a minimum. And the landowner went to the local sheriff and other law enforcement agencies, and he notified them of his concerns of what was going on his property. Well, here's where the problem arose. Apparently, the sheriff and the FBI conducted surveillance a couple months ago on the property, and here's what they concluded. They concluded that they could not find probable cause to search the property. But here's my question, if I could ask him. Why do you need probable cause to search a property that you've already been given permission to go on? Because it's not the guy's property. It's not the 2 Muslim men and the 3 women. It's not their property. They're trespassing. And the landowner has clearly already said he doesn't want them on there. And so it's not as if they needed a search warrant to enter the property, because the property's not owned by the suspects. And so that whole part of the story is absolutely confusing as to why the FBI and local law enforcement didn't crack down on this illegal activity sooner. But nonetheless, maybe more details will come out in the coming days and weeks and maybe explain that bit of confusion on my behalf. Changing subjects, there's some good news coming out of Washington. I know we often get frustrated about what's going on in Washington, but there's some good news going on in Washington. That is, Attorney General Jeff Sessions came out last night, or in the last day or two, after speaking at the Alliance Defending Freedom Summit, Religious Freedom Summit, and he said the Department of Justice will no longer partner with groups like the Southern Poverty Law Center. And for those of you who have been keeping up with this, you probably know who the Southern Poverty Law Center is. They're a group out of Alabama, and they love and they thrive off of falsely labeling Christian organizations as, quote, hate groups, because we simply believe in the Word of God. And we believe that marriage is between one man and one woman, so forth. And so the Southern Poverty Law Center for a long time has had this partnership with the FBI to call out and signal out so-called hate groups, of which they call American Family Association. But thankful Attorney General Jeff Sessions came out and said, we will no longer partner with groups like the SPLC. Let's go to clip 1. This is Attorney General Jeff Sessions.
But when I spoke to ADF last year, I learned that the Southern Poverty Law Center had classified ADF as a hate group. So you and I may not agree on everything, but I wanted to come back here tonight partially because I wanted to say this: you are not a hate group.
Well, there you go. That's Attorney General Jeff Sessions speaking at Alliance Defending Freedom, one of their summits, one of their conferences. And he says, you are not a hate group. And then he goes on later and says, the FBI and the Department of Justice will not partner with groups like the Southern Poverty Law Center. To that, I say, thank you, Jeff Sessions. And on a side note, I've been frustrated at times with Attorney General Jeff Sessions, specifically because he recused himself from the Russia investigation, which I view as a large mistake. But I believe he is doing many good things at the Department of Justice, and I've done everything but call on him to resign. I've called on him to unrecuse himself and get back control of the Department of Justice, but I haven't called on him to resign. And the reason I haven't done that is because if Jeff Sessions leaves the Department of Justice, it will surely be taken over by a swamp rat, because another Jeff Sessions will not make it through Senate confirmations because the swamp will not allow it. They will not allow it. And so we need Jeff Sessions to stick it out, to unrecuse himself and do away with this phony Russia investigation, because that's what he's there to do. You're listening to the Hamilton Corner. We'll be back in a few minutes. More news coming your way.
The courage to stand strong. Hi, I'm Matt Staver with Freedom's Call. Kim Davis, the Kentucky County Clerk, jailed for refusing to put her name on same-sex marriage licenses, recently appeared on the TV program The 700 Club. In a detailed interview, she shared her story of even receiving death threats, all because she stood courageously for her religious beliefs regarding natural marriage. Liberty Counsel also received death threats because we represented Kim Davis with pro bono legal counsel. Her incredible story about staying true to God's Word has come out in her new book called Under God's Authority. And it's not what you have heard from most of the media. Kim was chosen by God to help wake up our nation and frankly even the world to the shocking decline of religious freedom and the threat that same-sex marriage poses to that freedom. And Kim says, it's not if your time comes, it's when. Be prepared. Learn about her story at lc.org and order her book, Under God's Authority.
I read some of the comics and they really touched my heart. Thank you so much for the Truth for Youth Bible.
It's Truth for Youth Bible Week, and this year, American Family Radio, Engage Magazine, and Revival Fires International are partnering to give God's Word to our nation's youth. Parents, order a free Truth for Youth Bible for your teens to pass on to a friend. Or teens, you can order a Bible for a friend. And youth leaders can order Bibles in bulk for just $2 a piece.
We saw so many lives changed and seeds planted in the hearts of our students.
Visit truthforyouth.com or call 800-733-4737 between 8 and 4:30 Central Time. That's 800-733-4737. Order a free Bible for your teen to pass on.
It's like, man, I really like the Truth for Youth Bible. How do I get to your church?
Call 800-733-4737 between 8 and 4:30 Central Time or visit truthforyouth.com.
My life is changed forever.
Brian Fisher here with today's Life and Liberty Minute. The FDA just signed a new contract to work with Planned Parenthood to get fresh tissue from aborted babies to create what they call humanized mice. That is, mice with a human immune system. They are cannibalizing unborn babies to get tissue from their livers and their thymuses so that little mice have a functioning immune system. Tissue from miscarriages won't work. It has to be tissue from a freshly killed baby. Using our tax dollars for this grotesque form of research is Nazi-esque, something that Joseph Mengele might do. The FDA excuses all this by saying it's a very small fraction of the research they do. Well, we wouldn't accept that excuse from Mengele, and we shouldn't accept it today. Instead of humanized mice, how about some humanized researchers instead?
Catch Brian Fisher on Focal Point, weekday afternoons at 1:05 Central on American Family Radio.
Shining light into the darkness, this is the Hamilton Corner on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Well, folks, what you just heard from my friend and colleague Brian Fisher is exactly as you heard it, and it's exactly correct. You can read more about it at afa.net. afa.net, if you'll click on the top link that says The Stand, scroll down a little bit, you'll see Brian Fisher's article titled, Grotesque, the U.S. government is cannibalizing babies so that mice can live. Absolutely disturbing. Back into the whole Department of Justice, Jeff Sessions, phony Russia investigation. We're going to jump right back into that subject and really spend a lot of our time there. So as I mentioned before the break, I don't think Jeff Sessions should be fired or should resign, as frustrated at times as I am with him, because I think we will not find someone as good as him to replace him. Because I believe the Republican and Democrats, the globalists and elites in Washington, will not allow a good, solid law and order nominee to make it through the Senate to take Jeff Sessions' place. And not to mention, Jeff Sessions has a stellar record in the Senate and a stellar record at the Department of Justice for fighting for the Constitution and conservative values. He just made a bad decision to recuse himself. But that being said, I think he can do a lot of good work still at the Department of Justice. But on the same subject line about the Russia investigation, Devin Nunes, the congressman out of California, He was at a donor event the other night, a Republican donor event, and the left-wing media put a plant in there, and they recorded this private dinner, which is perfectly legal, I believe, in California. And so Rachel Maddow on MSNBC, she went on the air last night and said, we had this secret audio from this donor dinner, this Republican dinner, and you're going to hear it first here, and let's jump right into it. And then you listen to it, and it's nothing new. It's nothing new. But I figured we'd play a clip from it because it is some important topics being discussed. And this is clip 2. Devin Nunes has asked the question, basically, what will happen if Republicans lose the House of Representatives? Let's listen.
So therein lies, so it's like your classic catch-22 situation where we're at this is what puts us in such a tough spot. If Sessions won't unrecuse and Mueller won't clear the president, we're the only ones, which is really the danger. That's why I keep, and thank you for saying it, by the way. I mean, we have to keep all these things. We have to keep the majority. If we do not keep the majority, all of this goes away.
All right, I know that might have been hard to hear there. It was hard for me at first. But what he says there, in response to what happens if Republicans lose control of the House of Representatives, he basically says that if Democrats take control of Congress, all of the corruption will be covered up. Technically, he said all of this goes away, but what he means there is if Democrats take control of the Congress, specifically the House of Representatives, then all of this corruption that I've been uncovering in my committee, all of it will go away. And he's exactly right, because the only way we found out about the FISA abuses at the FISA court in Washington, D.C., the only way we found out about this phony dossier that's unverified and salacious, the only way we found out about all of these corrupt connections is because Congress has been investigating it for over a year now. And so that's one reason we cannot let Democrats take control of Congress. And speaking of uncovering corruption, this is clip 3. President Trump's attorney, Rudy Giuliani, went on Fox News last night, and he's talking to Sean Hannity about more corruption to be exposed on behalf of the Mueller investigation and the Russia investigation. Let's listen to this.
The reality is, the real story here is not that this case isn't going to fizzle. It's going to blow up on them. The real question is what we talked about before. There's a lot more to what they did that nobody knows about yet.
I know some of it.
A lot more to the obstruction of justice, to the collusion, to the fake dossier.
Oh, I know.
To trying to bring Steele back in after he was completely discredited.
And then feed it to Mueller.
Yeah. And Mueller is going to have a lot to answer for.
Mr. Mayor.
I said a long time ago, the investigation here has to be in the investigators, because we can't let this happen again in American history. We may not have a president as strong as President Trump. A lesser president could have really been cracked by this.
That's exactly right. A lesser president could have been cracked by this. And in layman terms, that's New York terms. In Mississippi terms, if this happens again, we may not have another president who has backbone like President Trump. We may not have a president willing to stand up to the crooks in Washington, D.C. because you put a John Kasich or a Jeb Bush in the White House and the left opens up a phony investigation into no crime. Well, guess what Jeb Bush will do? Well, I'm just going to resign for the better of the country, and I'm going to let someone else take my place. That's what would happen, because the elites and the crooks in Washington don't want somebody like President Trump in the White House. And so what Rudy Giuliani's saying there is we got to stop this in its tracks, because if we allow this to happen again, we may not have a president like Donald Trump willing to stand up and fight it. And so we got to get to the bottom of this. And moving on, but staying on the same topic, Jay Sekulow, who's also one of President Trump's attorneys, called this investigation, he said he believes it's fruit of the poisonous tree, which is legal jargon that basically the investigation is illegitimate. And he was on last night also on Fox News, and this is clip 4. Let's listen to Jay Sekulow explain to Laura Ingraham why he thinks that this investigation falls under fruit of the poisonous tree. Let's listen.
This is an investigation that at its outset has been corrupt. There's no question about that. It continues every single day. There seems to be a new revelation. So I'm not going to give a date. I think it needs to end very soon. And it needs to end very soon because the nature of what's taking place here is irregular, and that's being kind. And when I say irregular, look at how this started. It starts with the dossier from a foreign spy, basically, Christopher Steele. He was an intelligence officer for Great Britain. He puts together this dossier on behalf of who? Fusion GPS and the DNC. Okay. Another interesting fact, and now we're getting a lot more information on that, the number 4 at the Justice Department, Bruce Orr's wife, is working for Fusion GPS with Christopher Steele, putting together this dossier. That's how this investigation commenced. So as you know in the law, there's the doctrine of the fruit of the poisonous tree, and I think that anything going forward here has to keep all of that in context and in mind before we agree to do anything.
There you have it. And if you've been listening to this, you've been watching this for over a year now, what I call this endless fishing expedition, and the fishing boat hasn't even been back to shore to refuel. They just keep going on and on and on this fishing expedition, trying to find a crime, trying to hook somebody into a crime when there's not a crime there. And the definition, to be technical here, here's the definition of the term fruit of the poisonous tree. Fruit of the poisonous tree is a legal metaphor in the United States used to describe evidence that is obtained illegally. The logic of the terminology is that if the source of the evidence or the evidence itself is tainted, then anything gained from it is tainted as well. And so I think this whole investigation is illegitimate from its beginning, from its inception, because it was started by the Democratic National Committee, Hillary Clinton's campaign, and a foreign actor. And so the investigation didn't even begin at the Department of Justice. No, it started as opposition research. And that's why all of this is completely illegitimate. Not to mention, I completely agree with President Trump's attorneys to not sit down with Robert Mueller. There is nothing good that will come out of it. So kudos to President Trump and his attorneys for refusing to give in and sit down with Robert Mueller, because I can promise you if the president sits down, that will not end good for the president. Switching subjects a little bit, but staying in Washington, D.C., Washington, D.C. / the state of Florida, Senator Bill Nelson of Florida has been speaking. You know, Congress is on their 4-week or 5-week vacation, paid for by the taxpayers' dime. And Senator Bill Nelson's doing these campaign stumps in Florida because he's trying to get reelected. And he made this wild claim before this audience, and here's what he said. Senator Bill Nelson said this. This is reading directly from the news story. Russian operatives have, quote, penetrated some of Florida's voter registration systems ahead of the 2018 midterms, U.S. Senator Bill Nelson said on Wednesday, adding new urgency to the concerns about hacking. The state, however, said it has received, quote, zero information supporting this claim. It goes on to say, this is Senator Nelson, a quote from him. He says, they have already penetrated certain counties in the state, and they now have free reign to move about. He also goes on to say, so he says this, he makes these outlandish claims. Russia's in our voter system. Well, then the Tampa Bay Times asked Senator Nelson to expound. You know, let's provide some proof. You're going to make this claim? Please provide some proof, Mr. Senator. Well, here's what he says. He says, that's classified. Well, Senator, if it's classified, then why are you talking about it at these Democratic fundraisers? The reason I think you like to talk about it and then go, well, that's classified, is because it's probably not true. Either it's not true, and if it is true and it's classified, then you have just breached every protocol in place in the United States Senate, because it's classified and you're talking about it in front of Democratic donors in Florida. And what I believe there is that his claim is not really as much as it seems to be, and he doesn't want to have to expound upon it, because if he does, it'll come out that he's probably fabricating everything he just said. But Democratic Senator Bill Nelson claims Russia's in our election system. Then he's asked by the media to explain, and he goes, that's classified. Well, Mr. Senator, either it's classified or it's not, and if it's classified, why on earth are you talking about it in public? Another subject, I'm going to go through a couple more news stories before the end of this segment. The first one is this Army chaplain from Fort Bragg, Kentucky, North Carolina. Fort Bragg in North Carolina. And this Army chaplain, it has come out in recent days that this Army chaplain, who's a Christian, was asked by his administrators to host this marriage retreat for soldiers. And it came out that there was going to be homosexual Army members there with their, quote, spouses. Well, the Army chaplain said, I'm not going to be able to do this because of my Christian faith. And so he decided that he would get another chaplain within the Army who would participate in this, that he would get them to do it. And so because he backed out and refused to do this marriage conference or this marriage retreat for the homosexuals, he is being court-martialed. He's facing a possible court-martial because of this. And reading directly from the headline, this is at afa.net, our website, afa.net, and here's how it reads. An Army chaplain at Fort Bragg in North Carolina could face a possible court-martial and even military prison because of his views on marriage. After being asked to conduct a marriage retreat that included same-sex couples, the chaplain simply explained that his religious beliefs would not allow him to do so. The story goes on to say that the chaplain went as far to reschedule the conference so that the lesbian couple could be served by a chaplain who would accommodate them. But it turns out the couple who complained, the quote couple who complained, didn't even turn up at the retreat. They ended up having the retreat a couple days later, and they didn't even show up. And so they complain about something, and then they don't even show up to the event when they have it. But this Army chaplain apparently is facing discipline by our own U.S. Army because he will not capitulate to the sexual deviancy agenda. Another news story, this is an encouraging one to end this segment on. A Florida restaurant, I'll read directly from the headline, this will explain it better, this is out of Fox News. A Florida restaurant decided to cancel its DirecTV NFL package over the controversy about players kneeling during the national anthem. Curtis West, who co-owns Beef O'Brady's in Brooksville, Florida, with his wife Janet, told Fox 13 in Tampa Bay on Monday that there will be no NFL games shown because of the disrespect the players have shown towards our country. The story goes on to read that the restaurant will save more than $5,000 by canceling its package. But get this is the good part of the story, not to mention the first part. The restaurant instead will offer veterans 40% off on all food each Sunday. So no to the unpatriotic NFL, and instead we'll give veterans 40% off. I'm sure glad we still have American patriots in our country, such as Curtis West out of Florida, a restaurant owner. Veterans, all veterans, 40% off. We'll be back in a few minutes. We'll take your calls, 888-589-8840.
Who says you can't have your cake and eat it too? If you're like a lot of people, you would like to support the culture-changing efforts of the American Family Association. But there's the very pressing reality that your income must meet your current needs as well as act as seed for future income, either for the short term or for life. A charitable gift annuity might be your answer. A charitable gift annuity offers a unique method for both planning ahead for permanent income and supporting the work of the American Family Association. An AFA Foundation representative will walk you through the details of creating a charitable gift annuity, allowing you to decide if a charitable gift annuity is right for your individual financial situation. Connect with us today by calling 800-326-4543, extension 345, or visit us online at afafoundation.net.
What if I told you that you could clean your family's laundry and help reach the next generation at the same time? That opportunity is here through a company called Redeem Clean. Every time you use Redeem Clean products, you help support the ministry of the American Family Association. In addition to your regular AFA giving, Redeem Clean laundry detergent allows you to increase your support of AFA just by continuing to wash your family's clothes. Redeem Clean products work as well as or better than other products on the market. They're environmentally safe, biodegradable, and they're made in the USA. And they were developed exclusively for the support of the American Family Association. For clean laundry and support of a cleaner society, it's Redeem Clean. Learn more, find options, and order Redeem Clean products at afastore.net. That's afastore.net.
Hello, Americans. I'm Todd Starnes with news and commentary next. A history teacher at Lodi High School in California verbally attacked two students for wearing National Rifle Association t-shirts. One of the students was kicked out of the class. Another student was berated. The teacher told the kids guns were bad, that guns kill people. Charlene Craig's daughter was on the receiving end of those remarks. She tells CBS News in Sacramento it's not right for a teacher to attack kids like that. I reached out to the school district and they tell me the teacher was mistaken, that the shirts were not a violation of the dress code. They reached out to both families and apologized. There's no place in a public school classroom for bullies, especially when the bully is teaching the class. And the school district might want to keep an eye on that teacher just to make sure he does not turn his classroom into a left-wing indoctrination center. I'm Todd Starnes.
The Hamilton Corner podcast and one-minute commentaries are available at afr.net and urbanfamilytalk.com. Back to the Hamilton Corner on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the show this Thursday afternoon. I'm guest hosting for Abe Hamilton III. My name is Walker Wildmon. Great to be with you. If you want to call in, ask some questions, share your thoughts, you can call in by dialing 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. You know, I just got an update on this Bill Nelson, this Senator Bill Nelson, claiming that Russians have already hacked the Florida voting system. This is an update. One of the main election officials in Broward County, which is a very large county, one of the election supervisors, and might I add, this is a heavily Democrat-run county, Broward County, for the most part. And she says that the election supervisor, Brenda Snipes, says, here's what she says, quote, "We have had absolutely no information regarding that," talking about the hacks. She goes on to say, "We have not seen anything within our system that something strange is going on." So Senator Bill Nelson is either talking about classified stuff that's at such a high level of classification that even the people in charge of the election systems don't know about, or Senator Bill Nelson is involved in conspiracy theories and fake news. But it's got to be one of the two, and I lean on the second one. I lean on the second one. And you know what the left does? They always accuse us Christians and conservatives of peddling fake news and conspiracy theories, and we just don't know what we're talking about. But the reality is they make these outlandish claims, and then they're asked to explain themselves, and they don't have an answer. And so one of the two is going on there. I tend to lean that this is fake news, and Russia has not hacked the voting systems of Florida, but I stand to be corrected. We will find out, but Senator Nelson's going to have to explain himself. We're going to go to Bonnie in Ohio. Bonnie, welcome to the Hamilton Corner.
Thank you. Good to talk to you.
Thank you, Bonnie.
I just wanted to just make a simple comment on the chaplain. I just think it's so unfortunate what our chaplains are putting up with now. But he really has a good defense because he isn't trained for that. If he's a Christian, he's never been trained to conduct any kind of marriage counseling or anything for same-sex marriages. So why wouldn't he defer to someone who would be better trained for it? Mm-hmm. I think we're just getting really ridiculous with this. And it's time that somebody puts their foot down and says enough is enough.
Yeah, I completely agree, Bonnie. And to add to your point, this chaplain is forbidden by the Southern Baptist Convention, which he adheres to. He's an ordained Southern Baptist preacher. And according to the contract or the agreement that he has with the Southern Baptist Convention, he is not permitted to counsel homosexual couples. And so he's just abiding by not only his personal belief, his belief in the Bible, but he's also abiding by an agreement he already has with the Southern Baptist Convention. And kudos to him for that. And I believe that he will be exonerated at the end of the day. James in Texas. James, welcome to the Hamilton Corner.
Hi, I had a couple of questions, mostly about some of the legal stuff you mentioned, talking about Bob Mueller and the fruit of the poison tree. Earlier you mentioned about the Islamists in New Mexico and how you thought the police shouldn't have listened or abided by probable cause and should have just searched the ranch anyways. And I was just thinking, wouldn't that be illegal if they searched the ranch anyways? Wouldn't have that been fruit of the poison tree if they had just gone and violated probable cause and searched anyway?
Yeah, well, that's a great question, James. And to answer you there, that the suspects involved there, the jihadis, that wasn't their property. That wasn't their property.
Okay.
So the law enforcement, they simply need permission from the property owner, which they had already received. And so that's the explanation there.
I see. All right, well, that's all I had. Thank you very much.
All right, I appreciate it, James. Good point. Glad I can answer that question. We'll go to Florence in Indiana. Florence, welcome to the Hamilton Corner.
Hi, Walker.
Hey there, Florence.
This chaplain, I wish that someone could get a law to the president to leave people alone that don't want to comply with our criminals, you might just well say.
Mm-hmm.
And would that have to go to a senator or something?
Can you repeat that again, please? I missed the first part.
To get a law passed that Christians, like this chaplain, wouldn't be forced to do things like that.
Right. Yeah.
I would just think that they can't do anything wrong.
Right. Yeah, Florence, to answer your question there, and I'll let you go and then I'll answer it on the air. To answer your question there, I think what you said there is we need some kind of law that protects chaplains and other people of faith from not being forced to do things against their faith. And if I'm not mistaken, we already have federal law. We have, not only do we have the Religious Freedom Act that was signed by President Bill Clinton, but we also have a clause that was added in 2013 to federal law, which provides protections for Army chaplains who do not want to do things against their faith. And so I think you're on the right track there, and I believe we already have laws that protect chaplains. Not to mention we have something called the First Amendment, which should protect this chaplain. But we do have other federal laws that should protect this chaplain if it makes its way into the public court system or the judicial system. But very, very good points there, Florence. We'll go to Joel in Kansas. Joel, welcome to the Hamilton Corner.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Wildmon. I just wanted to ask, you had give us a good report on the jihadis down in New Mexico that have been imprisoned because of their acts that they're planning to commit. Mm-hmm. My question was, you talked about the FBI and the law enforcement didn't seem to be acting real quickly about that. What about the state senators and congressmen? Are you hearing anything that they're even concerned about it?
Yeah, that's a good question, Joel, and I'll let you go and answer on the air. But as far as I know, the senators there, so you have, this is in New Mexico, and to be honest with you, I don't know, I can't think of their senators off the top of my head, but this really is not in their purview, if you will. This is more so in the purview of local law enforcement and then potentially the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, if they have been notified of it. So, but my criticism and my question here, when it comes to this law enforcement, the local law enforcement and the Federal Bureau of Investigation out there in New Mexico, is, as I've mentioned twice, you have people, essentially these men, these jihadi, these Islamists, they're trespassing onto this rancher's property, and the rancher has complained on multiple occasions, not only to the court system, but also directly to law enforcement. But then the law enforcement, the FBI, says, well, we don't have any probable cause to go on the property. We need a warrant and probable cause to go on the property, but is the landowner's approval not probable cause? And is that not sufficient to go on the property? An example I mentioned to Jeff Reed, one of our producers during the break, is if you have somebody on your property, what you do is you call law enforcement and you say, hey, I have somebody trespassing. Will you please come remove them? And I'm oversimplifying this, but law enforcement then has permission to enter onto your property. And so the landlord in this example called and said, I want these guys off my property. And so there's some breakdown in miscommunication, or maybe the media is not telling the complete story, one or the other, and I'm sure we'll find out in the coming weeks and months. If you want to call into the show, we have a couple minutes left. The phone number to call in, share your thoughts, is 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. We'll go to James in North Carolina. James, welcome to the Hamilton Corner.
Yes, thank you. Now, look at here, man. This Southern Baptist organization, now what are they doing berating one of their own ministers who's supposed to be out there trying to save souls and deliver people from sin and deliver them from being oppressed and depressed and possessed by the enemy? And yet, when they go about doing the job Jesus told them to do, hey, what are they doing? They're telling him he got to get out. He don't belong there. Those are nothing but jackleg preachers and ministers of Satan, according to the 11th chapter of 2 Corinthians. Ministers of Satan.
Hey, James, can I?
Jackleg preachers.
James, I think I lost you early on. Now, which story are you talking about?
About the chaplain.
The chaplain. Okay, I got you. Yeah, James. Yeah, I'll comment on that, James.
Organizations are counterfeit.
Right. Yeah, James, you're showing frustration at the Army for trying to discipline this chaplain, I believe, and I completely agree in the sense that the Army should not be focused on disciplining Christian men and women who are trying to serve their country through the chaplain service. Instead, they need to be focused on defending our country and doing what the military is set out to do, and that is protect our country from foreign enemies. Joe in Ohio. Joe, welcome to the Hamilton Corner.
Hi, thank you for taking my call. Thank you for filling in for Mr. Hamilton. We appreciate all that you do. I just wanted to thank the Christian conservatives that went out and voted this past primary and encourage the upcoming primaries of Christian conservatives to stay diligent, get out and vote. I don't believe the polls here in Ohio. They told us for 3 or 4 months that O'Connor, the liberal Democrat, was up by 4.5 to 5 points, and he ended up losing by a point. So all the polls are skewed, 5, 6, 7 points towards the Democratic liberals, based on our liberal media. So definitely encouraging the Christian conservatives to get out and vote for the pro-life candidates in their districts. Thanks for all you do.
All right, Joe, good encouragement there, and I completely agree that we all need to get out and we need to vote our values, and that whether you be Republican, Independent, Democrat, or none of the above, it all does our country a good service when we get out and we vote our values at the ballot box, because that is how our country was intended to operate. Paul in Texas. Paul, welcome to the Hamilton Corner.
Hey, Walker. Thanks for the excellent show, and you're doing a great job.
Thank you, Paul.
My topic is kind of a little off topic. It's with Missouri, how the voters there voted to basically force workers to pay union fees, even if they didn't want union services, even though the Supreme Court had already ruled that states couldn't do that. My question is, why now? And the liberals always say, "Oh, the Supreme Court, that's the law of the land." Well, how come with abortion, why can't states make laws and that are pro-life and say, "Hey, look, the Supreme Court might have ruled in '73 that way, but we're going to do it our way"? I don't hear any of the liberal media saying that there's going to be any kickback on that vote, because the Supreme Court ruled a different way. What's your take on that?
Yeah, Paul. I'll answer your question here. The first thing about the Missouri passing those bills, or they may have been amendments on the ballot, on the general ballot for the general population there in Missouri, but nonetheless, it's from what I've read, Missouri passed a law that kind of contradicted what the Supreme Court ruled when it comes to mandatory union dues. And here's the thing: whether it be this topic or other topics, the left, the Democrats, the Marxists, they're all about the supremacy of the Supreme Court and how all-powerful the Supreme Court is, and we all need to obey the Supreme Court unless they don't like the ruling. And if they don't like the ruling, then, oh my goodness, we need to restore states' rights. Well, what about states' rights from 2000 to 2015 when over 30 states said that marriage is between one man and one woman? What about states' rights there? And to err on the side of the Constitution, I think a lot of this stuff, even union dues, need to be decided at the state level, because local control is the best control when it comes to government. Thanks for tuning in to the Hamilton Corner. I'm Walker Wildmon. I've been guest hosting for Abraham Hamilton today. We'll be back tomorrow with another edition of the Hamilton Corner.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast